Well, shooters and reloaders, it's Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to you from the hot lead zone. And today we're gonna reload using black powder substitute Hodgdon 777 3FG. Now you know that YouTube has prohibited making videos about reloading ammunition. But I would think that black powder, being that it's obsolete, old-fashioned, archaic, and there's no one on planet Earth that is using black powder for crime or for terrorism or anything that is adverse. So I'm hoping that there's no problem with a reloading video using black powder. Now, or a black powder substitute. Now, of course, we're making cartridges, but I'm not really going to go into the details. I'm assuming that you know how to reload already, and we're going to touch about the fine points of using a black powder substitute. So, since you know how to do the case preparation already, being experienced reloaders like you are, we resize these cases just like normal. We deprime just like normal. We neck expand and mouth flare just like normal so that we can get a bullet to enter the case mouth, as you see. And enter it nice and square using the RCBS two-step expander die. So you know how to do that already, and reloading with black powder or smokeless, these steps are the same. So we're going to skip all those steps and go straight to the powder charging with the black powder. And after all, that's where the rubber meets the road. Now, black powder, unlike smokeless, is always measured out in volume, not by weight. That's why you recall seeing drums of black powder or flasks being used to dump a certain amount of black powder into a muzzle loader. They didn't weigh the charges. It was done by volume. So we put our scales aside, and the whole idea is to have the black powder or black powder substitute fill the case volume behind the bullet. So there's no air gap in there. If there's an air gap between the black powder and the bullet, you can have your gun blow up. That's why the muzzle loaders, they always use a ramrod to ram that charge down and the ball on top of the powder so that there's no airspace. Always been that way. Only with smokeless powder do we have less than 100% case fill. So one good way to measure out volume is to use the Lee dippers. Now this one happens to be 3.1 cc. We're loading the 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum with the 777, and this puts out just the right amount of powder to fill up the space behind the 440 grain Lee cast bullet for the 500 Smith & Wesson. Now when we use this dipper, the idea is to take the dipper and go under the powder and make sure you come up square to the surface of the powder so you get a lump of black powder above the dipper. And then when you shake it like this, it levels it out. And you've got a measured amount, 3.1 cc of the black powder. If you don't go underneath and bring the opening of the dipper squarely up through the black powder surface, then you'll get a partial fill, and then when you try and go back in and refill to get that level, you're not going to be consistent. You want to go underneath, come up, shake off, have it that square to the dipper, and that's it. You've got a consistent charge of 3.1 cc's of powder. Then you want to use a drop tube. This is a homemade drop tube. This is much better than spending $35 for an aluminum drop tube. You take your case, and you put it right underneath the drop tube. And then you take your powder charge that you just went ahead and scooped out and drop it into the funnel on top, and it falls down through the drop tube. Now when you pour this into the funnel above, you want to pour the powder right onto the opening of the funnel so that you get even a maximum amount of drop. Because the idea is that the powder compresses itself just by dropping from gravity. So you get a nice solid fill. You don't have to tap the case and do all that kind of thing. Now you see the level of powder in there, and then we take one of our nice milk carton wads that we made, and we simply put it into the case opening like that, and then a simple 357 Magnum casing can be used to push that wad down onto the powder like so. And you see the level in there is such that when you take a Lee 440 grain 500 caliber bullet and put that in there, it's going to go right to the wad that you just placed and give it a little bit of compression, and that's what you want. Now when you seat the bullet so that it goes the case mouth right to the cannelure, you feel the bullet being seated, but then you don't feel any real compression of the powder. And that's the way it should be, because you're only lightly compressing the powder. You're not really jamming that powder down with everything you got. So there it is, all seated nicely right to that crimp groove, and it didn't give us a lot of feeling of compression, but we did get some compression, and that's good. Show you that again. Take an empty casing, place it underneath the drop tube, and then let's see if I can show you this with the camera in the way. You go ahead and do the dipper, bring it straight up through the surface, level it off. Then we take it up to the funnel and drop the powder right into the center of the funnel, right down the drop tube. That increases the acceleration of the powder through the drop tube and into the case. Now we like to use a white jar top underneath so we can see if there's any powder that spills, and you see none did. Look at these beautiful wads that we made for zero cost out of plain milk cartons. And see how it fits in there perfectly. And see, now, best way to tamp the wad down is to find the high side of the wad and begin to press there, as you see. And that gets it nice and square, and you don't have to push real hard, but look at how nicely that wad does its job. Now we press the bullet into the case mouth and it squares itself right up because of the two-step expansion mouth flare that we had accomplished. Then we go ahead and seat the bullet. And again, there's no feeling of massive amounts of compression anywhere. There you have it. Now they do make powder measures rated for black powder, and it's important that you have black powder measures if you're going to use a powder measure. The reason why is you don't want any chance of having static buildup doing black powder. So they have powder measures made out of brass parts in there that are designated for black powder, no static. But you're going to be spending anywhere up to $125 to $145 for a black powder measure. No real need to do that, because it turns out that doing handgun rounds, you really don't even need a drop tube, so that you could conceivably take your loading tray and just simply put a funnel into a case and dip and pour, dip and pour, dip and pour, and you can do your powder charging pretty quickly and not have to invest in a powder measure. Well, certainly putting the powder back in the bottle with black powder is easy. Done. Well, there they are, all crimped and ready to go to the range for some shooting fun with black powder. Bye for now.